I find interesting a narrative. The narrative that series was tied at 1 going back to Indiana. Mm-hmm. And I certainly understand that Oklahoma City had pummeled the Pacers in game 2. But I thought it was interesting, the reaction to everything, and the vibe, I would say, from what I heard on podcasts and radio, was basically this is over. And I would even use our show as a slight example. There just wasn't a lot of enthusiasm I felt. It was like,
none at all.
We're waiting kind of for this thing to wrap. And I found that interesting. Indiana had lost in similar fashion in almost every other round going into the finals that way. They had won a game and then gotten blown out at some point.
Yep.
And so maybe it's the East versus West thing. I don't know. Maybe it is acknowledging the juggernaut and wagon that Oklahoma City was all year. But there was a real vibe going into that game 3 that this series is done. And I just didn't really understand that feeling. I thought it was a little odd. It's the reason I liked the Pacers yesterday. I didn't know if they would win. But they came out, and now they're up 2-1. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like if the Thunder were up 2-1, it'd be over in 5. But the Pacers are up 2-1, and I think a lot of people are still going to be like, Oklahoma City going to win 3 in a row?
Yeah.
And I don't really kind of understand why this is becoming the narrative.
Well, I think a lot of it is what has been told to us all season, and that is that Oklahoma City is one of the best teams that we've ever seen, right? I mean, the numbers and the metrics back it up. We did segments in the regular season asking, is OKC or Denver more dangerous in the playoffs? And you laughed at me when I said Denver, and rightfully so. OKC ended up winning that series. It went 7. And I think part of it, too, has to do with the fact that this seems like such a different animal that Indiana is playing. And I don't mean that to be offensive to New York or Cleveland or anybody else that they played in the playoffs. A banged-up Bucks team, if I'm not wrong, in the first round. This is just, it's a different animal. You're not playing a team with a 6-man rotation who's going to, potentially run out of gas. You're not playing a Cavs team that at one point in that series, I think, was without 3 of their top 5 or 6 players. You're playing a team who, statistically speaking, is one of the best we have ever seen in the history of the regular season.
Point differential, it's like the greatest in NBA history. Yeah.
So that's why our mindsets are where they're at. Part of it, for me, is tongue-in-cheek that I just am trying to reverse jinx it because I desperately don't want Oklahoma City to win a title. And I still am coming into Game 4 now going to say, are they going to win 3 in a row and win it in 6? Because it wouldn't shock me in the least. Indiana has found ways to win games throughout the course of the playoffs in unique style, right? They've had these come-from-behind wins. Haliburton's hitting big shots. There's been nobody better in late-game situations. And then they've had a lot of these kind of games last night where, the start of the game wasn't great for them. They were a little cold early on. They started to wake up. And who was the culprit last night? If I told you on the show yesterday, how many points, what's the over-under for Benedict Mathurin? 11.5, 10.5. Is he even going to get double digits? How many has he even gone to double digits in this series so far? And he comes out and goes 9 of 12 for 27 points and the most bench points we've ever seen or have seen in an NBA Finals in essentially 15 years.
But I don't think he would have been. So I hear you in the finals so far. He hadn't had one of those games. I don't think
he had 5 in Game 1 and 14 in Game 2. He's fine, better in Game 2. But
I don't think you would have been. Why would you have been surprised? He's had some pretty big performances for them in these playoffs.
He's had random out of nowhere performances,
but it's not out of nowhere because he was having a good season for them until the last month of the season.
His Eastern Conference Finals point totals in the 6-game series went 9, 0, 2, 20, 23, 4.
Yeah, the Knicks series was easily his worst one.
Well, you're just like, so single digits, 0, single digits, 20, 23, single digits, and he's kind of off to a similar start in this series. So that's part of it for me is they've had these kind of games, and I said this after they won Game 1. To me, I don't know if that's a way that you can rely on winning a series. You can pull off a game and a crazy comeback. You're not going to do it multiple times. And part of me feels the same way after Game 3 where you're getting these outliers might not be the right word, but somebody getting hot and coming off the bench, scoring 27. Are you going to get another one of those games in Game 4?
And
this was still a game that was in the balance until there was 2 minutes to go. And then Indiana pulled away.
It is out of nowhere to a certain extent. It's not out of nowhere for this team. He was kind of this for them during the regular season.
Yeah, he has scored 16 a game this year. I'm not saying he's a bad player.
No, I'm not saying you're saying that, but why do we apply that to him? Oklahoma City got 60 some points from Aaron Wiggins and Caruso in Game 2. Did anybody have that? We didn't talk about how unique that was.
No.
I think the Oklahoma City respect is great. I also just find I don't know. I just think it's weird. If they're up 2-1, we're like, well, this series is over. But Pacers are up, and we're like, well, the Thunder are still going to win. We're in the championship. We've seen upsets in our lives in this NBA Finals history. We saw with the Pistons against the Lakers. We saw it with the Mavericks against the Heat. Like, you get upsets from time to time in this series.
You do.
And I'm finding it interesting watching. McConnell was awesome. He had 5 steals last night for the Pacers. Obi Toppin came up with a big play.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned Mathurin. Mathurin outscored the Oklahoma City bench by himself. Like
that was the whole difference. The second quarter was the entire difference in the game when he started going off and then carried it into the second half.
Well, the second quarter did. It was interesting how that ended because the first quarter was so electric. Second quarter, interesting. They're up. They end the half, 64-60. Then the third quarter happens. Jalen Williams goes off a little bit. They end up 5-6 points at the end of 3.
Yeah.
And then the fourth quarter, they wore down. I'll give them this credit. And this is the reason I gave them a chance in this series. I took Thunder in 6, and I don't know if that's going to happen. The Pacers have only lost 3 games in a row since the new year, one time, and it was in March. The reason I gave them a shot was their athletic, rangy wings defensively maybe making things a little more difficult. Now, SGA had a good NBA Finals. I don't think he was awful yesterday, but he was averaging 36 points per game in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, he was just fine yesterday. He wasn't bad, but he wasn't elite.
But I don't know about you. I watched that game, and I'm watching the end of it. He looked worn down. They had a Nemhard or a Shepherd, or they had somebody breathing on him the whole game. They did to him what we saw them do to Brunson.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like physically, and you saw him try to body with him, and he wasn't getting the calls. I felt like defensively, they just kind of wore him down. And then Oklahoma City's offense kind of went back to what it did against Denver. It got a little clunky, got a little solo dolo, no passing. And when that happens, you got a chance.
Well, and this is what just being able to play 10, 11 guys in Indiana, that's kind of what the Thunder had done to a lot of teams. They keep playing. Maybe it's a 6-7 point game at halftime, and you would see them then in the third quarter a lot of times is when the Thunder had their big run where they kept rotating guys in and just throwing wave after wave at you. Well, that's what the Pacers are doing to the Thunder. They're not getting as much offense from their role players as they had at other points in the season, so SGA is trying to have more of a role offensively. And, it's like taking body shots in a boxing match.
Even taking Turner. Turner didn't have a good shooting performance. Turner was big for them on defense. He had multiple moments.
He body bagged Chet the entire fourth quarter. I don't know what the hell Chet was doing.
Chet was getting pushed around by Nemhard.
They need to get his ass out of there. I don't know why you're changing your lineup and not playing Hartenstein more. You got to have a big on the floor. And why Indiana doesn't take more advantage of that when it's just Chet out there? Why is Turner not down low on the block every time?
Their offense is so much more fluid with Hartenstein on there passing and screening and creating mismatches, and they can't do it. And I think the Thunder need to be more worried about their offense than their defense right now.
Yeah, their offense goes into these weird slumps. It's like sometimes it's the best offense I've ever seen with ball movement, like even besting some of those Warriors teams. And then other moments I'm like, there's no passing. We're just doing one-on-one and dribble, in the shot clock, hoist a shot, hope for a foul.
Yeah.
Like that's not the way you're going to. And so like I'm sitting here asking today, where are we at on the Pacers winning this series? They're up 2-1 now, and they got game 4 at home. Like,
I'd still be surprised.
Really?
I would still be surprised.
Swag, would you?
I'm rooting like hell for it because I want Indiana to win the finals.
I won't be surprised now. I think they stole game 1.
Yeah.
They won game 3.
Yeah. They won game 3. Very well put. That was a good game.
Yeah.
We've seen OKC in this spot. They were down 2-1 to Denver, and they responded by winning Game 4 on the road. It was an ugly, low-scoring defensive game, and then they beat them again in Game 5, and then obviously ended up winning in Game 7. So we've seen them in this position before. I'm not surprised that you got the outlier. I keep using the word outlier. I shouldn't use that.
Yeah.
But that you get the boom performance from some of your role players at home. That tends to happen in playoff situations.
Mathurin and McConnell won them that game
They
last
absolutely
night.
won. And then Obi Toppin with big putbacks. Like it was not a Siakam and Haliburton show. So maybe that's what changes in Game 4 and your star players show up. I also think OKC is a team that has enough talent. You're going to get a better game from SGA, and you're getting like a week off in between games. So they wore him out as the game went on last night. But now we got to wait like 3 days for Game 4 of the
it's
series.
tomorrow night.
Okay, so only
when
one
they
day.
travel,
Thank
they
you.
get the extra day,
So
which makes it
only one day,
ridiculous.
but I do think OKC bounces back and wins game 4.
Who is the player for Oklahoma City? I mean, it's got to be probably Chet, right? When you say bounce back, Oklahoma City plays better. SGA can certainly do more than he did, but if it's not SGA, who is it for them? Because Lou Dort, 4 threes. Jalen Williams was pretty damn good for them. He had 26 points. You know what's funny is Chet ended up with 20 and 10
free throws in the fourth quarter. Though.
Yeah, they miss a ton of free throws.
Yeah, Jalen had some bad misses from the line there. Chet had 20 and 10.
He had 13 of them in the first quarter, but he didn't hit any threes.
And also, I think it's to what Dirt said. It's the physicality in the pivotal moments of...
He's trying to drive on Turner, and you're like, dude, you're not going anywhere. You're just going to get body back.
You can't get outworked for a loose ball by Nembhard.
No.
Nembhard's a great player. You can't get outworked there.
No.
That's where you getting the next contract you get, that's where that's got to show itself.
Yeah, I mean, those guys, the role players for OKC have played better at times in the playoffs. I know the stat lines don't scream of they didn't do a ton. I thought for Jalen Williams, a lot of it was in the third quarter. And for Chet, to Swag's point, a lot of it was in the first quarter. And if you could just balance that out a little bit throughout the course of the game, it'll help you out.
So part of the SGA thing, I'd say, too, on this, not only did he look exhausted, I thought collectively they looked exhausted. And that's maybe my biggest takeaway from Game 3. Pacers being up 2-1 is maybe shocking people that are watching this series the most. They played at their pace.
Yeah.
They made the Thunder play their game. They sped them up. They played them full court. They put pressure on them defensively. And as soon as they got the ball, now it bit them a couple times. Obi Toppin had a pass in the second half where he just took it and he threw it out to Mathurin, but it was a bad pass. I also agree with Richard Jefferson. These players need to stop drifting to the three-point line. Take your dunks and your layups. But like it bit them a couple times. But for the most part, they pushed the pace and the tempo, and that's how Indiana wants to play. What you saw last night is exactly the recipe to win this finals. And you got to remember, maybe it happens, maybe it doesn't. Oklahoma City, youngest team ever. So maybe that's what loses them this, is they fall into that Indiana trap while also having not that Indiana has a lot of finals experience, but that's where maybe some of the youth stuff ends up biting them.
Yeah, if you still feel good about where Indiana is at right now, you can get them at plus 185 to win the series. They're still they're up 2-1.
Think about what that was after winning Game 1. That was still a plus 400, 300.
They got Game 4 looming at home. They got a lead in the series, and they're plus 185 to win the NBA Finals. You gambling on them to win it?
I mean, at this point, I think it's why not?
Just asking.
It's getting weird. This finals is gonna be weird. It already is weird.
I hope it continues. Give me the Pacers winning the NBA championship. It would be glorious.
Now, if they go up 3-1, we're getting way ahead of it.
If they win 3-1, then I'm there. I need to see 3 wins before I get there.
You need to see the 3-1.
I got to see a 3-1 series.
Where's your odds on Oklahoma City coming back from 3-1?
I would gamble OKC to win the series probably at that point. I would, just because the odds would switch and they would be an underdog, and you give me them as an underdog. I think they could win 3 in a row.